Welcome, sixth graders, to Chapter 3, and we're going to be talking about natural resources. This is Lesson 28, and we're going to be covering pages 52 to 55. When we talk about the word natural resource, it's anything that is on the earth for people to use. That could be water, it could be wood, it could be soil, it could be animals, it could be plants. It could be non-renewable or renewable, which we'll talk about in this lesson. Whenever scientists study something, it makes it easier if they classify them or to put objects or organisms into groups. With natural resources, they do the same. There are two major groups of natural resources. We have non-renewable and renewable resources. The word renewable means, the prefix re means again. So if we have a resource that is renewable, we can use that resource over and over and over again. If you put the prefix non in front of it, it means no or can't. So if you have a non-renewable resources, if it runs out or there's no more of that resource, it cannot be made again. So we have to be careful of how we use these non-renewable resources. Some examples are fossil fuels and nuclear energy that uses uranium. When we talk about fossil fuels, some examples are natural gas, petroleum, and coal. Now, they're called fossil fuels because they're made similar to how a fossil is made. In order to make a fossil, plants or organisms have to be buried under sediment quickly, and a lot of sediment. And all that pressure of the sediment compresses it into a fossil. Well, sometimes instead of a fossil, a chemical reaction will happen and they'll be turned into these fuels. Uranium is a non-renewable resource, but it's not a fossil fuel because it's not made like fossils. It is a mineral, but it's highly dangerous because it's radioactive. Almost all matter will have three states. It'll have a solid, liquid, and gas, depending on how much energy you put in or take away. Well, fossil fuels are the same. The liquid form is called petroleum. The word petroleum means liquid rock. Another word for petroleum is called crude oil. But when you pull it out of the ground, you can't use it right away. It has to be cleaned or refined. And one of the largest sources of fuel oil or crude oil is found in Alaska's Prudhoe Bay. Now, this is a non-renewable resource, so we have to be careful in saving or conserving our resources and using them wisely. And geologists are always looking for new sources of oil because most of our energy needs come from fossil fuels. When we talked about crude oil, I mentioned that we cannot use this straight out of the ground. It's too dirty. It has to be cleaned, or another word for cleaning is refining. And in order to refine this crude oil to be usable, we'd ship it to a refinery or a factory. And in this factory, there is a distillation tower, and that's a fancy word for heating this crude oil and causing it to vaporize or to turn into vapor. Now, we learned from the water cycle when vapor rises and is cooled, it will condense or come back together, and it will make these different liquids or fuels that we use in our car or other machines. Then the stuff that's not reusable, then it is just waste. It is just thrown away. Something else that comes from petroleum is called petrochemicals, and it's used in paints and plastics and fabrics and also makeup and perfume. It's even added to some foods to keep them lasting longer. And what's interesting, in 1977, the Alaskan pipeline was finished, and it's over 1,200 kilometers long. And it takes oil from the Prudhoe Bay all the way to the city of Valdez. And that from that point, it is shipped to many, many states across the U.S., to all these different factories called refineries to clean all of this crude oil. The gas form of fossil fuels is called natural gas, and it's found very near to oil fields. What's nice about natural gas, it burns cleaner because there's no sulfur in it, so it doesn't cause pollution like coal or petroleum does. When they first discovered natural gas, they thought it was a waste, and so they would just burn it off. But they realized that they could collect it or save it and use it as a fossil fuel. Now with these fossil fuels, we have the three states of matter. We have solid, liquid, and gas. The liquid form, remember, is petroleum. The gas form, or the vapor form, is natural gas. And the solid form is called coal. Now, coal is made from plant material that has been buried quickly. It serves about 25% of our needs, and we're going to learn in the next few slides there are three different kinds of coal. In the last picture, you'll see this is a coal mine, and they're using this very large machine to dig out coal out of the earth, and then it will be shipped to different parts of the United States or different parts of the world to be burned for energy. The first kind of coal is called anthracite. Now this is the best and the cleanest because when it's burned, it doesn't create any soot or powder, or it doesn't cause any air pollution when it's burned. But the problem with this, it's hard to find and it's expensive. The second kind of coal is called bituminous. Now bituminous is used mostly because it's easy to find, but the problem with it, when you burn it, it has a lot of sulfur inside of it and it causes air pollution. It also creates a lot of dust or ash when it's burned. When it's burned, it releases sulfur dioxide, and we mentioned this in chapter 2. When sulfur dioxide mixes with the atmosphere and the precipitation, it causes acid rain. The third kind of coal is called lignite. Now, just like the other two coals, it is made from decayed plant material that has been buried quickly. But the difference with lignite, it's only partially or partway decayed. And you'll notice that it's different in color. It's brown. And usually you'll see pieces of wood mixed in with it. And in order to use it, you have to dry it before you can burn it. And it is found in places called bogs, which is in the second picture on the slide. The last thing we're going to talk about is nuclear energy. Now, nuclear energy doesn't use any fossil fuels when it's making its energy, so that's a positive thing, but it's still non-renewable because it uses a mineral called uranium. Another positive thing is it doesn't create any air pollution, but if it's not controlled very carefully, it can be very dangerous. For example, an explosion happened in the city of Chernobyl in 1986, and this radiation poisoning spread over many, many kilometers, and even today that land people cannot farm in because it's unsafe to grow crops in. Another thing that is not positive about nuclear energy, it makes radioactive waste. When the reactors split the uranium atoms, it makes energy and clean energy, but after that reaction happens, there's this waste, and it needs a special storage container, which is very, very expensive. Now, when the reactors in this nuclear power plant splits the atoms, making energy, that energy then heats a very large pool of water, and when you heat water, it makes steam. Then that steam rises and it turns a turbine, and that turbine makes electricity for us to use. Now, nuclear energy, there's only, in the United States, nuclear energy is only used about 7% of our needs. In this last slide, we're looking at a pie chart that shows what the world might use in the year 2035, which is about 20 years from now. And you can see that still projected uses, or what they think society will use, the amount of fossil fuel is still high. Natural gas is 23%, coal is 27%, oil is 29%. And even though renewable energy and nuclear energy is clean, it's still a small portion of this pie chart. And that's because renewable energy, though it is very clean, it is expensive to make it possible to use renewable energy. So scientists are always trying to think of new ways to make or use clean energy so we're not utilizing all of our fossil fuels. Okay, sixth graders, this is the end of this lesson. Go ahead and read pages 52 to 55 for tomorrow, and I'll see you then.